Good afternoon. My name is Eric Jackson. I'm the director of the Connecticut Transportation Safety Research Center at UConn. Sorry I couldn't be there with you today. I'm actually on a flight down to South Carolina to talk to the South Carolina DOT, work on a plan with them to get a crash data system set up in their state so they can emulate kind of what we've done in Connecticut and build a tool to meet their needs for safety analysis in the state. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to give you a brief, I'm going to show you a brief video of the crash data repository, how data gets into the repository, and then I'll give you a guided tour of exactly how to use the tool, some of the safety analysis that you can do, and then at the end I'll show you maybe some of the futuristic things we're trying to do with the repository and where the future of the repository lies and some of the safety analysis that you'll be able to do. Tony can answer any questions that you may have. I'll also put up my contact information so that if you need to contact me, feel free to shoot me an email. Be more than happy to talk with you about how you would do certain types of analysis or use the repository in the future.
On average, 96,681 crashes are reported to the Connecticut Department of Transportation each year. That's 265 crashes every day. We want to make our roads safe and have fewer crashes, but where do we start? How do we start? We start by looking at crash data. Crash data tells us three things. It tells us how many crashes are happening, where the crashes are happening, and sometimes what is potentially causing them. In Connecticut, the place to go to find crash data is the Connecticut Crash Data Repository. This is the Connecticut Crash Data Repository and how it works. When a crash happens, a police officer goes to the scene of the crash. The officer fills out a report and documents information such as the number of people and cars in the crash, whether or not the driver was intoxicated or distracted, and what the weather was like at the time of the crash. So when a crash happens, a report full of information is filled out. Then what? Then, the Connecticut Department of Transportation collects all the reports and gives them to us here at the Connecticut Transportation Safety Research Center, or CTSRC for short. This is where details from the crash reports are compiled and imported into the Connecticut Crash Data Repository. The details are turned into crash data that you can search and use to make your town a safer place. Now all of the information from the reported crashes all over the state is in one place. The repository can be searched by town officials, law enforcement, and concerned citizens who want to improve safety in their town. They can search for answers to questions like, how many crashes are in my town? More than in others? Or, what type of crash in my town is most deadly? Ones involving cars or pedestrians? So let's recap. You want to make your town safer, so you need crash data. You go to the Connecticut Crash Data Repository and run a search. The search looks through details of all the crashes that have been reported all over the state. Now you can take this information and see what things can be improved and where things can be improved in your town, so it can be safer and have fewer crashes. This has been the Connecticut Crash Data Repository and how it works. To visit the Crash Data Repository, go to ctcrash.uconn.edu. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and check out our YouTube channel for more crash data information.
So now that you have an idea of exactly how data gets into the crash data repository, let's go over to the repository site and take a tour. So if you go to ctcrash.uconn.edu, you'll open up to this splash page. The first thing you'll notice is over here on the right top, you're going to see a Connecticut traffic deaths ticker. What this basically shows you is the number of traffic fatalities that have occurred to date in the state. So this data is obtained from the Connecticut Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. So you'll see as of March 22nd in 2017, we had 58 deaths so far. 2016, there were 63. 2015, there were 46. And 2014, there were 44. Just gives you a way to kind of track where we are trend-wise in terms of the number of traffic fatalities we're seeing out on Connecticut's roadways. Also gives you a preliminary year-end total. For 2016, we had 311 fatalities in the state of Connecticut. You'll also notice there's a brief description of what the repository is here in the middle, and then down at the bottom there's some notes to users. These are some of the data quality issues that we've seen, some of the data issues you should be aware of. One of the most ones to make the note of, the repository works best in either Firefox or Chrome. It'll still work in Internet Explorer, but you'll notice there's a few little graphic interface things that don't work exactly the way they will. Your data query will come back and work fine. It just may look a little weird when you're trying to select data and do some of those things. The last one to note is some of the data that we have is only as good as the officer's ability to obtain that data. Most notable one being distracted data, driving distracted. The officer has to do his course of investigation to determine whether or not a driver is distracted. So just kind of be aware as you're starting to use the data exactly what the data quality is and some of the issues that we may have with that data. To use our site, for the first two buttons here, the basic users, you don't need to register, but if you want to use the advanced tools, you do have to register. You simply click the button up here at the top. We ask you a couple quick questions. Once we have your email address, we'll shoot you an email with a link. Once you click that link and confirm that you're an actual person trying to access the crash data repository, you're live and ready to go. So it's pretty much an instant access to the repository. So the first tool I'm going to show you is our crash dashboard. So if I click on the crash dashboard, what you're going to see is we have several different options. If you're not aware, Connecticut updated its crash reporting form in January 1st, 2015. So we went from a report form that was 20 years old into a new report form that meets the national guidelines called MUC. So you're going to hear MUC several times. Connecticut went MUC compliant on January 1st, 2015. Down at the bottom, we have one of our emphasis area dashboards. This is the dashboard I'm going to show you. So if I click on my emphasis area dashboard, it basically, once it loads, it'll show you some of the emphasis areas that the DOT in traffic safety are interested in. These are DUIs, young drivers, bicyclists, pedestrians, work zones, roadway departures, school buses, non-motorist crashes, those type of crashes that we have in the state. One thing that I should note is that the dashboards are only updated on a monthly basis, where the crash data repository is updated every night as crashes come in and are approved by the DOT. You'll actually get new crash data updated every day. So you notice I clicked on the DUI crashes. This screen here in the center updated to let you know that that filter actually worked. And this is data from January 1st, 2015 up into the present, which from this point looks like it's 3/9/2017 was the last time that we pushed over an update. So that's an idea of when the last time the dashboard itself was actually updated. So you can see we have 6,400 crashes that occurred that are DUI related, involving 12,000 people and 10,000 vehicles. So as I scroll down, what you're going to see is we have the ability here to filter even further down. So if I selected a certain town, so if I was interested in crashes that occurred in Manchester, I could pull out and show me only the DUI crashes in Manchester. If I was interested in a certain road, I could select Interstate and then select 84 out of the list and get Interstate 84. So I'm going to leave that just DUIs for the entire state to begin with. Our next tab over here at the top gives you query description, so this details exactly how each one of those emphasis areas actually work. And then lastly, we have the report. Now what the report is it's going to generate a 17-page report of facts and figures of exactly what's going on with the emphasis area that you're looking at. So we selected DUI crashes, so DUI crashes are up at the top. And what you'll see here is we have the number of fatalities that was actually reported for that time. The number of suspected serious injuries, B injuries, C injuries. And I'm not going to go through all of these tabs, but what you'll notice is there's a lot of data here, and there's a lot of good information that you can pull out of the repository itself. Some of the key ones that we're going to look at: date and time of crash. So if you're interested in when DUI crashes are actually occurring, as you would expect, January 1st, New Year's, you have a lot of DUI crashes that occur there. You'll see here we have the months on the left-hand side, and across the top are the days or calendar days that go across. So now you can actually see every day of the year when these crashes are actually occurring or when they're most prevalent. When we look here down at the date and time, you'll see on the left-hand side days of the week. Across the top is the hour of the day. And what you notice, the dark spots are when crashes are most prevalent and occurring most often. So you'll see in the evenings on Friday, Saturday, into Sunday morning. Looks like Sunday morning at 2 a.m. and Saturday morning at 2 a.m. Those are kind of our hot spots for DUI crashes. If we scroll down even further and look at the data downstream a little bit, you'll see we go from crash, and now we have some vehicle statistics that you can look at. And then we have some demographics. So who's out there driving drunk and being involved in these crashes? So what you can see, as we look at age of both the passengers and drivers, what you'll notice is drivers aged 21 to 25, along with their passengers, are most likely to be involved in crashes. Another interesting fact to look at is whenever you look at these people involved in crashes, people in the 21 to 25 age group often have other people in the car with them. So it's not only that they're involved in a crash, but they also have passengers in the car with them. I will show you down at the bottom here. What happens is if you hit download and then you select PDF, you can hit Sheets and Workbook, and then you can download that entire workbook. And what that does is it takes all of those tabs up at the top, compiles them into a single PDF, and then you have that PDF that you can take. You can print it out. You can email it around. It's there for you to use however you see fit. While that downloads, I'm going to go back to the crash data repository. I'm going to pull this up, and we're going to go into our advanced users tools. So once I hit my advanced users tools, it's going to ask me to log in. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to switch over to our muck data. The police officers are required to put in a latitude and longitude for that crash. So what you can actually get now is the ability to map all of this data and look exactly at some of the trends that are going on. So as I scroll down, since you guys are in Manchester today, I'm going to pick on Manchester. I'm going to pull up the town of Manchester. I'm going to look at their crash data, look for some of the hotspots and issues that are going on within the town. So simply all I have to do is select muck, go down, grab the town of Manchester, and hit run query. Once I do that, it's going to bring me into my next screen. So what you're going to have is all the crashes that have occurred since January 1st, 2015 in the town of Manchester, which is 4,178, involving nearly 10,000 people, actually almost 11,000 people. So what you'll notice here, the different tabs we have a crashes tab where each crash is a different row. Then we have the vehicles tab where each row is a different vehicle. And you'll notice that some of these have the exact same crash ID. So these are two vehicles that crashed into each other. And then the third tab is the persons tab. So each tab, each row here are people involved. So once again, this crash had two people. Both of those were drivers. This one has three people, two drivers, and a passenger in one of the cars. So one of the first things that people like to do is simply just go in and view crashes on a map. So if you hit view crashes on a map, I'm going to set my criteria to crash severity and then hit view map. What this is going to do, it's going to bring up the state of Connecticut, and here are my crashes within Manchester. So as I zoom in, I can now see all the Manchester crashes that have occurred. I can zoom around. If it's too cluttered and you don't want to see your property damage only crashes, since once I click here on this push pin, they will disappear. If I only want to see my fatal crashes, I can turn this off, and now I've got my fatal crashes. Looks like there's been several fatals over the last 2 years, 2.5 years in Manchester. So I can turn on my injury crashes again, and I have the ability to look for crash hotspots. So if I turn on my heat map, what this is going to do is going to show me my hotspots within the town of where crashes are most frequently occurring. So I left on my injury and my fatals. If I wanted to turn my property damage only crashes on again, I can turn those on. And you notice once I turn those on and off, it's essentially the same hotspots. So whether it's an injury crash or a property damage only crash, very similar in terms of the patterns that you're actually seeing out there on the roadways. So now what I can do is if I'm interested in a certain hotspot, so we're going to go right up here to this one, I can zoom into this location, look and see what's going on. Tolland Turnpike and Adam Street. Turn my markers back on. If you're familiar with this intersection, pretty large intersection in Manchester, right up from the BJ's and Manchester Honda. What I can actually do is take my Google Street View guy, drop him down into the center of the intersection, and now what's going to happen is I can stand in the middle of the intersection and see where these crashes are actually occurring. Then I can zoom around. It's got my push pins in where I can see exactly where these crashes are. So it gives me a reference of kind of maybe which legs of the intersection we're having issues with. Is it a certain leg? Is it a certain point in the intersection? Obviously over here is where we have a lot of our crashes that are actually occurring. I can go back out. If I zoom out, I can then also turn on my satellite view. So now I can get a satellite view of exactly where these crashes are occurring. Zoom in a little bit further, and what happens is you get kind of an oblique view that comes from Google as well. So we're using Google's imagery to really assist us in trying to identify problem areas and some of the utility that we have. Now what I can do, if I turn my satellite back off, go back to my map, if I do select and query, what's going to happen is I now have the ability to select and query these crashes that occurred at this intersection. If I hit View Vehicle Vectors, this is kind of a crude way of trying to determine exactly what types of crashes. So it's kind of our beta version of looking at collision diagrams. We are developing a more advanced tool to be able to do that, but this was kind of our first shot at being able to do that. Turn my markers back on. So what I can do, if you're interested in individual crashes, if I click on this, it'll give me information on this individual crash. But what I can also do is if I hit the diagram button, I can see a diagram of exactly what's going on with this individual crash. And then I can go to Query Selection. And when I query selection, what that's going to do is going to bring me back into the repository. So now I have, it looks like 100 crashes that have occurred at that intersection. And there's several things that I can do. If I hit View Diagram, what that's going to do is going to pull up the diagram for that individual crash. And I can simply just keep hitting Next Crash. And every time I hit Next Crash, it's going to show me the diagram for those crashes. So what I can do is I can look for common trends, themes. Looks like Manchester was a little bit slow in updating to Easy Street Draw. They were still using a lot of hand drawings for their crash diagrams. But it lets you look at the issues that are occurring within the intersection in terms of common problems or themes that you're seeing within the crashes themselves. I have the ability to add a summary. So if I hit Add Summary, crash severity. Data type lets me determine exactly what I want to count. Do I want to count crashes, vehicle, or persons? I'm going to leave this as crashes, so we count the number of crashes. I'm going to hit Add, and what that does is it allows me to look at the trends over time. So what you'll see is the number of fatals. There's been no fatals at this intersection. Property damage only crashes around 30 a year that occur there. And then injury crashes anywhere from 9 to 15. 2017, we already have 4 that have occurred there. But what it'll let you do within this window is if you click and drag, it'll actually create a graph down below. So I can graph by year. I can add, if I don't like a line chart, I can show my pie chart to show which years have the most number of crashes. If I go across this way and then switch to by row, what it'll do, it'll show me the number of fatal, injury, and PDO crashes that have actually occurred there. So let's do one more before we're done. Let's go with weather condition and crash severity. And then I hit Add. What that's going to show me is the number of injury, fatal, and property damage only crashes that have occurred due to different weather conditions. So if you think you may have an issue with pavement friction, you can look for wet weather crashes that have occurred there when it was raining, and then try and figure out if you have an issue or a problem with those. So with that, that's the main function of the Crash Data Repository and some of the tools that we have. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to try and answer those. If you hit this Contact Us button down at the bottom, that email goes directly to me, and then I will be able to answer any questions that you may have about the crash data repository.